Hi, I'm Jason. This is Chicago Mastering Service. We basically looked for a space for a pretty considerable amount of time, like a good 6 months or something of like, I mean, I don't know, we looked at 40 or 50 spaces probably or something. And this one I actually found on Craigslist, Go Craigslist. And the main things we were looking for was a pretty wide open area that didn't have a supporting beam through it so that we could potentially build a shell of a room in the middle of another room. You know, some kind of a solid floor. Like most places that we looked at that had some kind of creaky old wood floor weren't probably going to be a great option just for sound isolation purposes. Or we would actually, you know, certainly have to build a floor then as well. Clean electrical environment in that A, that the building had some sort of decent electrical service in it, and B, that it did not have main parts of that electrical service running right through the middle of this room, because just the EMF that's generated from a lot of current flowing by you, even in conduit, can really wreak havoc on, you know, low-level audio signals and stuff. So we found this place. It has the metro trains outside, which was basically a common factor in about at least 60 to 70% of all the places we looked at, because they were almost all right down this metro line between, you know, I don't know, Halstead and here, more or less. So we got used to that, and that's really only a factor for, you know, just being a little bit obnoxious for listening, but also for the lay that was an issue. And we solved that by having a spring-loaded concrete pad that the lathe actually sits on, which is just basically weighted and sprung with springs such that it can absorb the resonance created by the train. And, you know, you'd have to talk to our design wizard to find out how he did all that sort of calculation.
Yeah,
but
like
supposedly it was calculated very, very, very accurately, and it does seem to be fine. Like we've done some tests of cutting silence when the trains go by, and we have no evidence of that being a problem. From in this room, you can sort of hear the trains, but it's significantly attenuated, and so it's not really a big deal. What we did essentially is we have a big machine shop next door, which does all kinds of crazed welding and stuff. So we had to come in here with our studio designer and do a bunch of tests, which basically involved getting them to run all their welding machines one at a time while we sat in here with some EMF meters and some and just basically looked for giant bursts of problematic EMF. And then there's an issue about radio waves being too close by, which another space we looked at and were almost ready to use had both problems with electrical current flowing under the floor and problems with very close radio towers, which were really blasting sort of low-level radio stuff, or low-frequency radio stuff into our space. So eventually this space passed muster on all those accounts, and it's basically a slab on grade, so we just built a sort of a shell of a room onto the cement floor that was already here. So the floor doesn't really pass many transmissions, and unlike recording studios where you have a drum kit sitting 6 feet away in the other room, we don't really, you know, there's not super loud noises here. Our main concern is just that it's quiet enough to listen and make sound decisions. So we had a guy called Bob Alach, who is an acoustician designer from Massachusetts, do the room design for us. And he just basically did some creative problem solving based on the overall amount of space we had to work with and what sort of systems we needed to have in place. And, you know, he sort of made a lot of decisions based on necessity in terms of like the way the room is oriented and, you know, the position of this console, and actually the exact design of this console down to every angle and everything else, which is all in the service of minimizing unwanted reflections and controlling bass with a lot of hanging panels, which you can sort of see up through this kind of, all this cloth that's covering everything is basically kind of like, you know, it's very sheer. You can kind of see things behind it. There's diffusers back there. There's a bunch of absorbent panels. There's probably 80 or so of them hanging all around us.